Hi everyone. This video is going to cover the examples that are in the 3.1 portion of the note packet, of the Chapter 3 note packet. We're going to specifically look at domain and range. This should already be filled out, but what you also need are two sticky notes, so they can be small. So if you don't have those yet, make sure that you obtain those. You need these for the example. So you're going to turn to the next page, basically where we left off, which is, so we talked about the vertical line test. We did these two examples. So the next thing here is actually the definitions for domain and range. So the domain is the set of all possible input values. And remember that the input values are the x values. And then the range of a function is all of the possible output values, or the y values. So we're going to be looking at a few relations, and we're going to be relations or functions, and we're going to be writing down the domain and range of each. So there's only two examples that we are going to cover. Actually, no, we're going to do a few more than that. We're going to do three examples in this video. And the first one is going to be A here. So the domain, remember, we defined it up here, are all the possible x values. So if you are given a graph that has specific points, then what I would do is I would label those ordered pairs by their x value and their y value. So if we look at this first point here, that ordered pair is -3, -2. Then over here we have -1, 0. Then this one is going to be 1, 2. And then this last one here is 3, 4. So the reason why I want to label these is because now it's going to be really easy to write down the domain. So input values, so we're going to write domain. And the input values are the individual x values of this function. So I have 4 of them because I have 4 points. And we want the domain and range to be written from least to greatest. And that's really important, so make sure you write that down. So the domain, the smallest domain value is -3. Then the next one's -1, then 1 and 3. So we typically use the squiggly bracket to represent a list of numbers. So again, the smallest one is -3, the next one's -1, and we have 1 and then 3. And again, all of those came from the x values in my ordered pairs. The y values are the range values. And again, from least to greatest, the smallest one is -2, then we have 0, then we have 2, and then 4. So the range is going to be -2, 0, 2, and 4, and it's just those values. So if we have points, it's more straightforward than if we have a graph. So now we're going to look at the graph. This is where there might be some confusion. So even after you watch this video, I just want you to pay attention as best you can and to write down what I write down. And even if you still have questions afterwards, that's okay. I need to get the initial concept to you, and then we're going to work more with this on Friday. So this is where you're going to need your sticky notes. Now, this example isn't as easy as this one over here, because notice that the points are all, we have a line basically of solid lines. So what that means is that all of these ordered pairs that make up this line, and there are an infinite number of ordered pairs that make up these solid lines, are part of my domain. So when that happens, what you have to do is, visually, the sticky notes just help us figure out where we are looking. So I want you to take your first sticky note, and I want you to place it on the far left side, not completely covering up the graph, but just basically to the edge, far left side of your graph. And then do the other side, so all the way to the right side. So behind your sticky note, your graph does not exist. So the reason why I'm doing this is because we're going to look at the domain values. And what we're going to do is we're going to organize this. We're going to organize our thoughts from the smallest domain value. So again, we're talking about domain, so maybe we should label that. The smallest domain value, and then we're going to label the largest domain value. So if I were to label this ordered pair right here, that ordered pair is -2, -1. And then the ordered pair up here on the right is 3, 2. 3, 2. So the smallest x value, and again, I'm only looking at the x values because the domain is just the x values. The smallest x value is right here at -2. There are no points that are further to the left. So the smallest is -2. And the largest is 3. Okay, so that x value here, since that ordered pair is 3, 2, the largest is 3. The largest x value is 3. Okay, so we're looking at a range of numbers between -2 and 3. And how we represent a range of numbers between -2 and 3 is with a compound inequality, specifically an AND inequality. So you've already listed your smallest, you have your largest, x goes in the middle, and these dots here are closed, so that tells me that it's including these values. So we're using less than symbols. So our domain are all the values from -2, including -2, to 3. The other thing that I want you to think about is imagine that, since we're looking at the domain values, imagine that all of these ordered pairs get drawn to the x-axis. So maybe the x-axis is a magnet. So this is our x-axis right here. And our y-axis is here. So imagine that all of these ordered pairs are magnetized and they're drawn to the x-axis. Well, what would that look like if that happened? If all of the points just were drawn to the x-axis? What it would look like is it would look like a single number line. So here's the points on the x-axis, and it would start at -2, and it would end at 3. And we would shade in the middle, which looks like, if you remember from section 2.5, that looks like an AND inequality, and that's what we have here. So we actually represent that. We ignore the y values when we are talking about the domain. So these values here, or this range of values, make up the domain. Now, switching to the range can be a little tricky because it's confusing to kind of switch our mindset. So we're going to remove our sticky notes, and we are going to place it below the graph, immediately below the graph, and then immediately above it. So again, visually, I'm just looking at the graph. So we're going to do the same thing for the range, where we are identifying the smallest y value and the largest y value. So again, we're focusing only on the y's. So the smallest y value, well, I've covered up the ordered pair that I've listed, but this y value, if you go over to the y-axis, it's at -1. So the smallest y value is -1, and the largest y value up here is at 2. Since we're talking about the range, we're talking about the y values, so y is going to go in the middle, and we use less than or equal to symbols. So again, that is we're talking about a set of in between two values, -1 and 2. Okay. Take these off, and we have, again, our domain and range listed. Again, this is confusing at first, so if you're looking at this and you're just like, I don't understand it, I don't want you to stress out about it. It does happen with this particular section, and honestly, it takes some work, practice, and honestly breaks. So you do a few practice problems, and you just kind of need some off time to process this information, and I see it every single year. So again, if you're not sure about it, don't worry about it. We're going to continue plugging away and continue working on it until you understand it. And now let's go over to the progress check. So I'm going to actually go to 9 and 10. I'm not going to do 9. 9's a little bit easier. You're going to do the same thing where you list the ordered pairs and then you just list the domain and range, just like example A. But 10, the graph is connected. So the domain and range is a little more challenging. So we're going to do this process again. When we find the domain and range, we are placing our sticky note on the left side. And we are going to write down the smallest x value. Well, that smallest x value, so it's at this point, that is at 1. So the domain starts at 1. And then if I place my sticky note here on the right side, that largest x value, we bring it down to the x-axis, that is 5. So it is between 1 and 5, we're talking about x. X goes in the middle, and we're going to use less than or equal to symbols. Okay? So that is the domain. The range, start at the bottom of the graph. So below this sticky note, the graph does not exist. And above this sticky note, the graph does not exist. So the smallest y value, this is where we get a little confused. So let's actually label this ordered pair. That ordered pair is 1, 2, 3, but the y value is 0. The top values actually occur in 2 places. This ordered pair is 1, 4, and this one is 5, 4. So they share that y value. They're both 4. So the lowest y value, again, we're just looking at the y value. The lowest y value is 0. This is for the range. Y is in the middle. Highest y value is 4. There are more videos for more practice, actually directly over the worksheet that I'm giving you as homework. So, please try some problems, watch the videos, and have questions ready for me, which I understand there will probably be a lot of questions. Have those ready for me on whenever next class period. Okay? Thank you.